It's time for another episode of That Time I Got Reincarnated in the Same World as an Anime Podcaster. Welcome to episode 15. Feels like it's been forever, but we're back.
Woo!
So, in case you're new here, we're a couple of friends who've been watching anime and talking about anime and manga for a while, and we decided we were going to do a podcast about it. So, here we are. So I'm your host, Isekai Sensei-Sama, aka Brad, and as always, I'm joined in our little weeb cabal by Kermit D. Grog, aka Andrew.
Moshi Moshi, Kermit Desu.
And Bento Baggins, aka Ben.
Yosashibori.
So, oh my gosh, it feels like it has been so long. We had to push recording back a little bit because Kermit was going on vacation.
He was on an adventure on the high seas.
And then I decided to get COVID and screwed everything up, so... But we're back now, and we got a lot to talk about.
Woo!
But before we get into that, couple small news items, one or two. First of all, Frarian Beyond Journey's End, which, if you'll remember, they announced an anime for that.
Oh,
that
yeah.
will be coming out.
I forgot about that. When's that due out?
I forget.
Oh, shoot. I thought that was going to be the news.
I think it's the end. Fall, I think.
It seems like a good warm fall anime.
But the news this week is the manga has gone on hiatus.
Oh, no.
That's the worst. I thought you were going to say it was over, and I'm like, oh, good, it reached an ending.
Well,
no,
hiatus
in fact,
is worse.
They got to a point where it sort of is like, I don't know how this is going to end now.
Ugh.
Yeah.
So how far ahead is it in Japanese?
It's not super far. I think there's going to be two more. I believe I should probably check on this, but I believe there's two more volumes that are going to come out.
Okay.
One might be this month, and then I think it's March, and then 2 or 3 months after that. So,
But do you think it's going on hiatus because the anime is coming out?
Most likely.
Yeah, that happened with Chainsaw Man and Faraway Paladin.
And Spy Family.
Yeah,
I mean,
so-
Spy Family goes on long breaks all the time because it's really hard to make.
These mangaka are working constantly all the time on these manga, and so when they have other work to do, in this case, working on this anime, even if they're not like drawing it, they have to be part of that process.
Yeah.
There's no way that they can continue to put out the manga that way.
Oh, I'm glad they are.
Let's never stop Ichiro Oda from
Well,
doing One Piece and the 50 million other One Piece things that he needs to be a part of.
that's
But also that man is going to die when he finishes One Piece.
But also the way he draws things, I don't think he has too difficult of a time with it.
Rude.
He's just going to, like you said, he's just going to crumble into dust and fade away.
It's his, not Horcrux. That's the dumb Harry Potter thing. What's the Lich thing?
Oh, his phylactery.
One Piece as a concept is his phylactery, and when it is finished, he will just pop into dust. He will get Thanos.
Well, his work will have been completed.
Yeah.
Second bit of news, and this is probably the more important one, but I just found out recently, Ben likes the new Trigun series.
I do. I'm as surprised as anyone. My wife made me watch it. She made me watch it because she thought Vash was hot. She liked the new Vash hair, that hair in his face. It really did it for her. I will say I like the character designs better in this one. Wolfwood looks great.
The original one was very much a 90s anime.
Well, but the manga kind of sucked too. But I really like it. I'm not sold on the CG. I know that's like a tough point for each of us, but my wife really likes the CG. I found it a lot less distracting than I thought it would be. And they actually even do some interesting things with it. Yeah, I would recommend it. It's only 5 episodes in. It's the perfect time to hop on.
I will watch clips if you send me clips.
And he'll balk at the CG.
I'll send you some. I mean, it still looks like you're watching a video game cutscene, but it's like a really nice video game cutscene.
The future is now, old men.
Back in my day.
Embrace modernity.
The only thing is they cut Millie.
What?
Yeah, I have to throw that out there. They cut Millie. She's not in it.
Why?
They replaced her with an old drunk man.
She's What?
Yeah, they're not insurance salesmen anymore.
What's even the point?
They're newspaper reporters.
That
my
makes more
God.
sense, admittedly.
It does. It's a good change, but I can't believe they cut Millie and Meryl's like an intern or she's like a brand new reporter, and she reports to this old drunk guy. And I don't know what's going on because like, did we just cut the Millie Wolfwood love arc?
I thought the insurance thing made sense.
I'm not saying it didn't make sense,
It
but
made
a
sense
journal
until-
like following the story, a journalist following the story so doggedly makes more
I
like
suppose.
feeling sense. But I would not say that the insurance thing did not make sense and was not compelling.
Look, the end of the insurance arc in Trigun was anticlimactic AF because they just rule him as an act of God and then don't insure any of those people anyway. It was terrible.
I will say, I'm not upset that it's been remade. The original still exists. I can still go watch it.
Justice for Millie.
Is this a remake? I thought this was a continuation.
No, it's a straight up reboot.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more thing before we jump into the discussion. Just wanted to give a shout out to Tobias. We got an email.
Got an email. We got electronic mail.
Yeah, Tobias from Germany. So shout out to him. Thanks so much for your feedback. I really enjoyed reading your email. I replied and told him as much, but wanted to give him a little shout out here. So
Yeah, thank you. Your words were very gratifying for what we want to do with this podcast, because I know there's a billion other anime review podcasts you could be listening to, and we try to approach some new ideas that maybe aren't as present in
Did you guys email
Anime
me
world.
this? Like, what? I didn't read Tobias's email.
you should probably actually like,
look at
read
the Discord.
Oh
sometime.
my god. I'm sorry, Tobias.
I celebrated that
I'll
comment.
look into it. Was there praise for me specifically?
Yes, in fact,
Oh.
Tobias really likes heroin addiction.
Yeah.
It's me. I'm the short straw. I'm the weakest
Yeah.
No,
link. I need to read the romance manga.
specifically, he said it's very refreshing to listen to an anime podcast with broader range of topics and not just reviews. So that's for all of us.
Well,
And we really
that's a
appreciate
Kermit
that.
one.
We're definitely
Yeah, that's
going
why I
for
was-
that.
That was one of my major things going
Yeah.
into it. I know we have book club, but I try to keep what power I do over this podcast. I try to keep it where we're talking about things.
And then he goes on to say, at the moment, I'm enjoying the heroin addiction episodes the most.
It could change. It's only at the moment.
Yeah.
It could change at any moment.
But yeah, we always appreciate feedback. It's great to hear from people who are listening and enjoying. You know what? We'll hear from people if they don't like us either. So.
You can literally make us dance on puppet strings, as has already
Right.
been shown.
Yeah, and in
you
fact,
hold the power.
Tobias actually gave us a couple of recommendations.
Oh, for heroin addiction.
Almost all of them I already have on the list, but there is
Hey,
one.
there you go. Move them up a little bit more.
There's one that wasn't, so we might be doing that one next.
Yeah, we can prioritize at least.
Yeah. So I've seen this going around on the internet a lot lately, where people are comparing Minata from My Hero Academia against other anime protagonists and going, why is it okay that they're sexually harassing these people, but it's
Oh.
okay because they're like beautiful and, you know, not short and ugly.
That's an interesting way.
That's an interesting
to
take.
look at it.
I actually kind of like that. Neither of them should be doing it.
And I haven't jumped into any of these discussions,
Do you have an example?
but, well, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Is that there's examples all over the place.
I mean,
Well,
remember
I will
when
tell
Goku
you-
as a child technically molests Bulma multiple times?
Yeah.
What? Goku.
But it's played for comedy.
Goku didn't know though.
That
Like-
it's a man wrote that joke down on paper
did.
where a
I'm
small
not-
child molests a teenager.
I'm not saving. I'm not saying it's right, but I am saying if you're gonna pick one from Dragon
I know,
Ball,
that was kind of
it's obviously Roshi.
Roshi.
Right.
Roshi's the worst.
Well, but that's the thing. So I didn't jump into any of these discussions, but I did think, it crossed my mind as I saw these multiple posts about this. And I thought, you know what? I'm not giving those other characters a pass. I don't give that behavior a pass. However, I do ignore it a lot of the time. I don't, internally go, oh, it's okay that they're doing that because he's good looking and the girl likes it or whatever. But I do find myself ignoring a lot of the problematic aspects of the anime and manga that I'm into, and not even anime and manga specifically, most media. There's problematic aspects of TV, movies, books all over the place. And I feel like as someone who has pretty strong moral convictions, that if I don't ignore a lot of this stuff, I can't really enjoy most entertainment.
Before we get into it fully, I would use the phrase I've been using recently, is that instead of ignoring it, you are floating over it. You're deciding to not hold it in you and think about it as a real thing, because then you will be going, this is problematic, and then you'll feel those feelings.
That's probably a better way to put it.
Did we have the conversation about the Demon Slayer Pleasure District arc on the podcast?
No, but we did have multiple discussions about that while watching it.
Correct.
That's a good one.
I feel like that was a really good one where we had a little bit of reversal, because usually Brad is the one who's able to float over the most things, and usually I'm the one that's the most like crotchety about that stuff. And for some reason, when we got to the Pleasure District, I was just very easily able to go like, yeah, there's a bunch of messed up stuff, but I'm not thinking about it. It's this cultural spot in time, and I'm mostly there for like, wow, look at all this stuff. This is a weird, interesting, different culture to me, and not like, hey, there's children working in a adult pleasure house, and this is kind of really effed up. And
I'll tell you what, most things, it's fairly easy for me to float over, as you said. I think that's a better term, because ignore sort of implies that I don't care at all.
Yeah.
But I do. It's just,
if you take a moment to look down at the ground you're floating over, you'll go, I don't like this.
But there's something about like sexual slavery,
you
brothels
read
and stuff like
a
that.
lot of isekai,
Well,
sir.
right. Now the thing is that in most of those situations, and we'll get into this even more in depth in the next segment, but in most of those situations, it's framed that the women are rescued and they fall in love with the protagonist and all that. Mm-hmm. Whereas a brothel, sexual slavery, that kind of thing, is very much these women are doing this because they don't have a choice. They need money. They're slaves, whatever it is.
You mean neither does usually the isekai's harem.
This is
characters.
where I was asking, like, give me the example of who we're comparing Minata to, because as I have gotten older, and this was like my alternate opening to this episode, is I own a bunch of manga that I have got to get rid of. Like, now for space reasons more than anything, but like there are a lot of things I'm never going to read again. I bought them when I was a teenager. As I have matured, I look back on that and think like, I really don't want to be associated with that anymore. And I think I need to get rid of it. And like, I have a hard time destroying a book. That's just one of my weird, I don't collect much, but that's one of my weird collector things. And I would like to give it away or get rid of it somehow where it doesn't destroy it. But like, I can't just leave this in my apartment or something.
We're going to destroy Love Hina.
Yeah,
you can destroy Love Hina.
We're only the first one. This isn't like a full-on thing. It's just we need to release its soul back into the universe.
But then we got the other problem of like, I have other Ken Akamatsu comics. I have AI Love You. I have, God, I was just talking about Attack on Titan. Like, I don't like the way Attack on Titan ended. Now I got to get rid of that too. So like, I do. There is an extent to which like, yeah, Demon Slayer, I was able to float over the Oiran arc, but then like Love Hina, I'm out. I'm actually out now, where I wasn't before. And I don't know, some of it is I don't float as much as I used to. I think I have stopped reading a lot of stuff that gave me the bad vibes.
I think the world has made us heavier because we are now more aware.
Yeah. That's true too. There's yeah, it's a combination of society evolved and I got old. You know, I'm not a teenager anymore.
You became introspective though, because it's like I can see from my own upbringing and taking things in is like I feel like unless you're actively paying attention for it, when you grow up with anime, there's like when you're younger and you don't know any better, you pick up a lot of these tropes where it's like, oh haha, Master Roshi's. It's played for comedy that Master Roshi is making this woman uncomfortable. And when you're a kid, you're just like, oh, this is the funny music's happening, so this isn't problematic.
That's just a thing people do.
That's just the thing that happens in anime. And then when it happens another one as you get older, you just don't think about it because it's like, oh, this is just the thing that happens in anime. And it was, not to say that it's gone now, but it was worse then. So it's easier to, if I'm not paying attention, it's easier for me to float over those things. But like the stuff that I didn't grow up with, I have a hard time floating over. And I think that's it. Like when you're younger, when you don't know better, you pick those things up and they become less, oh, it's just the trope. Here's a little comedy bit. Even if I never laugh at it, my brain just, labels it as something simple. And I have to take the moment. It's why a lot of the times, like the Dragon Ball scene I described earlier, I will describe them in probably like hyperbolic way to like force my brain to go, hey, this thing happened. And not like it's like, oh my gosh, Goku, how no one can read Dragon Ball. This is unacceptable. Like, I mean, I'm going to guess come down on some things like that, but like, I'm not going to come down a lot of it like that because it's like, it's at the time, I wish it was better, but it's not. But like, I have some of that old ability. I have some of that old Peter Pan, Tinkerbell magic that I can float over things if I just sort of send my brain back.
There is certainly an aspect to it of, is there something else of value about the work that makes it worth looking past that? Where something like Love Hina, that's the whole thing. Like, Love Hina is a harem thing about, this guy gets with every kind of girl. There's like one of every kind of girl in his little harem. And of course, like one of them is the young girl. And that's weird. And you can't really look past it because the whole thing is just a creepy situation. It's just a creepy, weird. All the harem stuff is creepy and weird to me. I can't do it.
You cringe and bear it if there is something else to dumpster dive for.
It's so interesting you say that because, like, for me, it definitely, talking about the Demon Slayer, the brothel arc, is that like, it sort of comes down to consent to me, because like, yes, underage relationships and all that, super creepy, definitely not okay. But there's an aspect to it where, because there's consent there, and I know that technically in the real world that consent does not exist because they're too young. But in this fantasy that we're reading, because that consent is there, it doesn't trigger the same disgust mechanism in my brain that the brothel stuff does, that the sex slavery stuff does, that makes me like,
because everything seems fine.
Revulsion.
Well, and let's go ahead and say,
I ignore the fact that there is that age difference. Like, that is the thing that I'm floating over. That I'm going, I'm just pretending that everybody's of age.
Yep.
We're just ignoring the fact that if this was real life, this would 100% not be okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I just want to, like, on the record here, we're not talking about canceling anything. We're not talking about you can't read anything.
Nope.
I'm going to assume that all of our listeners and all of us, we're all law-abiding people who have like relatively standard morals. We don't do anything that's wrong in this area, but we might accept it in fiction.
Yeah.
This is not the like morality police going, hey, you can't, like, this episode is about our own relationships with these things.
Right.
What stands out to us? How do we deal with it? Where are our lines?
Yeah, I'm not here to tell you, like, because you like this, you're a creep.
I also, I don't know that it's right to say like it's okay. It's more like it's sort of pervasive throughout all media.
Yeah.
So that it's like, if you were to take that moral stance and say, I am not going to consume any of this media that has these problematic aspects to it, you would be consuming very little.
I don't agree with that statement.
You don't think?
No. All media? What are you reading?
Well,
I don't know I guess I don't know what your lines of quote unquote problematic are here, but I don't think all media. I mean, I guess I don't know. Do you mean it's in its production? Like, I don't know how wide of a bubble, because I didn't think we were getting outside of what the source material was.
There's a wide range of stuff, but I mean, like, American television sexualizes minors.
I was going to say, like, a good example might be, like, by far, when you're talking about, like, the dubious consent stuff, or maybe not even dubious consent, but, like, situations that are romantic in fiction, because you're in everybody's head and everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
That are not cool in reality because you can never be inside somebody's head and you can never really know what's going on. The romance genre of books, that is what keeps publishing alive. Romance is by far the most popular thing on the market.
Interesting.
And it is, you're going to find a lot of problematic stuff in romance. Like if you approach those as real people in real situations, almost a lot of that.
I mean,
gets thrown out.
I feel like with that, you're getting into like pornographic writing, which is like the ultimate, like, this is a very specifically made machine and it is the exact corners and everybody's on board because this is how it has been deemed. And like,
I think historically, one of the things that's gotten it about anime is there's
a lot of that.
There's a different
and some of
standard.
It is gross.
There's a different standard in Japan for what you would animate. Certainly, I mean, it's shocking to see things aimed at kids that you would never see aimed at kids in America. Because Shonen Jump is still like Master Roshi. This is a comic for a 14-year-old boy. This is not Family Guy. This is
specifically aimed at children.
Yeah, this is on Cartoon Network, not Adult Swim. So that's part of why I think anime gets an especially bad rap for this. And then the other part of it is just there's totally different cultural norms toward that stuff.
I think what might sort of differentiate maybe like Western television and movies from the Japanese anime and manga stuff is that, you have a lot of these fictional relationships between high school students, but they're almost always played by like 25, 30-year-olds. And so when you look at that, it doesn't trigger the part of your brain that goes, oh, these are children that are doing this.
Well, it's the same thing I feel like in anime. Like, I don't remember what we were... No, wait. I didn't talk to you guys about that. It's that female gambling show on Netflix that I still can't remember the name of. It starts with the letter K. And it's like, that show technically stars high school students, even though they're in this weird academy. And that show is also mad horny. And it's just, I have to do the like mental gymnastics meme where you see the person holding their hands out and then like one person just walks through it because they're not doing any mental gymnastics. And the other person's like all their points to just get around this. And it's just I throw my hands up and I go, this is an animation. These people aren't real. Everybody's depicted mostly consensually. These are practically adults. I'm not going to try to think too hard about it because if I do, I'm just going to ick myself out of here. And there's like, I guess you said, there's enough other stuff going on here that I will go through it.
Yeah.
And I will just go, everybody's generally following the rules well enough. But if this, and then to Ben's point, if any of this happened in reality, it'd be really gross and I wouldn't want to see it. But because it's an animation where people get to be drawn and people are, I guess I'm going to make the point of like, usually when you see high schoolers on a lot of, especially more fantasy and far out anime topics, they are practically working on like an adult mentality of
definitely
concepts of like self and others and all of that. Like, this is not how a high schooler would react in this. Like, this is an adult if they're even how a human acts at all.
And I think just anime and manga style, a lot of the times, they might go, oh, this is a 25 or 30-year-old. They look like a child because of the style that
Jotaro Kujo is like 17,
right?
And he looks like a 40-year-old man.
That's the opposite. But there's also this aspect. There's a lot of manga that I read that are like high school romance kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Almost all of them are not necessarily problematic, even though sometimes they do have that like, oh, this is a sexually charged situation, because they mostly focus on the actual like, oh, it's a romantic kind of thing and it's a slice of life and all that. There's definitely ones that maybe lean a little bit too far, but I think for the most part they do a fairly good job of just going like, oh, aren't these children? I say children, they're teenagers, but they're like, children. Aren't they cute? Aren't these relationships that they're cultivating cute? I will tell you what was weird, especially about the I forget what they call it. What is the arc in Demon Slayer called where they go to the red light district?
Isn't it the Pleasure District arc? Isn't that what it's called?
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah. So I think the thing that made that especially weird is how uncritical it is of that.
Right.
With Master Roshi, the joke is he's not supposed to be doing that.
Right.
He's supposed to be an enlightened martial arts master, but he's actually just a lecherous pervert. And in Demon Slayer, it's not a joke. It's just like, yeah, these kids work at a brothel.
Right.
It just is.
Yeah.
Which is why I think that I don't have as much of an issue with Minata as I do with that arc in Demon Slayer.
Because it's
a
pulls
joke.
from a real thing. Oh, because it's a joke. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Minata doesn't win. He doesn't get
Right.
the girls. Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody around him is going, "You're a creepy pervert.
But everybody around him
Stop
keeps
it."
tolerating him.
Well, and that
instead
is
of
the thing.
destroying him.
And the fact that it is played off as a joke, and like no one ever like arrests him for sexual
like that's
harassment
where I
or
think
whatever.
that we are
Yeah.
like. I don't want to. Trained is too hard of a word to use here, but and so is indoctrinated. I can't think of the words that I want that are nicer and more low level. But it's like because we have been watching anime forever, and these tropes keep showing up over and over
They're
again.
normalized.
They're
Right.
normalized.
Yeah.
We don't. We play them off more of like this is frustrating, but it's not like it's you get a lot of whatever energy, and not
Yeah.
like this. I just don't want this, and like I feel like more and more all of us are reaching. It's like I do not want this on my screen anymore. You know.
My Hero walks a fine line with me in a lot of ways, actually. My Hero with Minata, there's at least some criticism of him. Like in the universe, the fact that he is short and ugly is kind of part of the punchline. Is like you're not supposed to like him. He's supposed to be gross. But then you have stuff like the big muscle bunny girl just gets the crap beat out of her over and over. And like I know where we are in the anime, and I'm telling you that doesn't stop. Like somebody likes watching this girl get beat up.
No,
And
I want to watch her kick ass.
there's a lot of like and like the girl that makes stuff. She always has to like pull open her shirt to make stuff,
Right.
and like there's no other way we could have handled that. And the Invisible Girl, I think where he finally started to like irk me is he drew a cover recently, a chapter cover, or maybe it was a cover for one of the books even, of the Invisible Girl like nude, but you can see her. Like she's outlined.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why you gotta do that? Like that was where it was just like it just became a little gratuitous for me. I haven't stopped reading My Hero, so this is a good example of what we're talking about. Because I'm still invested. I still really like the arc and where it's going, the final battle arc. But yeah, people have said his art has gotten so much better in the manga as he's gone on, and they're like, he's either going to make the next Berserk or like the next great hentai. And we don't know which. Because
why not both?
It
There's
is-
a lot of that in Berserk.
yeah, it is 50-50 with him though. Like there's a lot of perverted crap in My Hero that flies under the radar. And I think what got it for me was I was like, you just didn't need to do that. Like it just, that was a cover. Like that didn't need to exist at all. You could have drawn anything.
There's a question. Here's a statement. So, is there something different? I guess her getting beat up is not the greatest example of it, but like, is there something different than just here is a specific female character of many female characters we have that we are sexualizing, and is that better or worse or more problematic or whatever of like, here is the male pervy character who sucks and everybody dunks on, like, is that problematic to have a sexualized female character who, at least for the bunny girl, is not a teenager? Or like Mount a Lady, where it's like very clearly this is somebody's
Yeah.
thing. It's that old.
Yeah.
He likes
It's-
big women.
It's that chestnut. He likes
Yeah.
big women. He likes muscular, and it's like,
I guess
hey,
that's better than the alternative.
no, it is better than the alternative.
no one in universe is sexualizing them.
Because I am going to say ban lolly stuff.
Yes. 100 billion million %. I don't care if she's a 300-year-old dragon. She looks like she's 6. Not cool. Don't care.
Well, but I think like
That's my hard cutoff.
that I don't know if I'm going to say like
Acceptability.
legally ban it, but like that
Not
is-
legally ban it, but like
that is something where it's like that's a hard line.
F
Yeah,
that.
I can agree that that kind of stuff shouldn't be in mainstream media. I don't know if I would say that it shouldn't exist at all because
Yeah,
like
no. Banning something is the quickest way to make it an underground
Yeah,
problem.
and,
It's
like-
it's just morally just like more people should be like cut that shit out.
Well, and it's one of those bans that's unenforceable. You can't stop.
Yeah,
people from-
exactly.
there's the
That's
whole
why you
thing
make
about,
it a-
like,
you make it a
the level
pop
of like
culture thing.
mental illness that is, and like should there be I don't know. That is not this episode.
this
That's a
podcast.
little too deep for this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I here's one for you. So, you were asking before about, is there examples? And maybe this is a really good example because maybe you've completely forgotten.
Maybe.
But earlier on in My Hero, it wasn't just Minata that was doing
Electric Kid does
creeping and stuff.
Yeah, it was the Electric Kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we've glossed over that,
He got better. Bakugo told Deku to go die, but he got better.
Well,
he doesn't do it anymore.
This is an interesting point because Electric Kid got better when he started, and I am sorry, I don't know any of their names, even though I read this every week.
Yeah.
Electric Kid got better when he started developing a real relationship with earlobes.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think there's a little bit in Toriyama too of there is a line in Toriyama's work of before Toriyama got married and after Toriyama got married.
Where did it happen though? I don't know because he's been writing. He's been writing for ages even before he starts.
I think he
Dragon
got married
Ball.
in 84.
Okay, but here's the issue I take with that. Are we going down the incel route of all of my problems will be solved if I could just have a girlfriend?
No, but I am going to say that the pervy stuff, part of the reason I don't like Love Hina anymore is when you're a horny teenager, you might enjoy some of that stuff just because you're a horny teenager, but then after a certain point it gets sad. And then you have to realize that the man who drew that was the age I am now when he was drawing it. And he's a sad man. And that's where it started to get creepy for me with Love Hina is if it were a teenager drawing for teenagers and it was all horny and sexualized every girl like that, I'd kind of get it. But it's a man drawing for teenagers.
Yeah.
And that it's not, I'm not going to say like I said, I'm not saying ban, I'm not saying people are creeps or anything, but I am saying it doesn't make me feel gross. It makes me feel sad to have Love Hina on a shelf.
There's a certain line with a lot of these. I think the lolly stuff does this where there's certain ways that it's portrayed that are sort of normalizing it, and I don't think that's okay.
It's the I've been wanting to bring up this point for since we started. It's the oh, everybody's on board, ergo it's fine. And I always come back to to jump out of anime actually entirely just to describe this concept. I always remember when I finally watched Disney Song of the South for the first time after hearing for years and years and years it's incredibly racist. And I watched it and I'm I don't get it. Nothing's jumping out at me that's not worse than a bunch of characters in the animated Disney movies. And it was the idea that it's yeah, this is a sharecropper thing. All these black people are just happy to be here on this plantation. And it wasn't that anything necessarily that flagrant happened. It's just this situation is problematic because it is whitewashing reality.
The crows from Dumbo were probably worse.
Yeah, but it was it's like a institutional thing. It's that thing where it's on the surface everything seems fine. Everybody seems happy. Why is there a problem? Nobody's being mean to anybody else based on race, but it's more of this is, I keep wanting to say constitutionally, which is not the word I want. This is systematically problematic. And I feel that's a lot of the, I would say that a little bit to Brad, your earlier point of these isekai people gathering a harem. It's everybody's on board, but when you think about it in a concept of a writer wrote these things that they're just on board. And obviously everything's written and made up and you can control your characters do whatever you want because they're not real. But it's those moments where that's usually my rebuttal to oh, they're against it in the thing, or oh, everybody's on board, there's consent. And I go, a person wrote this to make it that way. They had a choice to do that or not do that.
There's a good point there. I think there's a level where I'm at that I don't feel that bad about floating over these things.
And yeah, I'm not. This is me not coming against.
No.
You can float.
Yeah.
I float. It's the don't. I had that reading Dragon Ball. It's just don't think. Just float over it.
But more specifically, it's I know as an adult, a fully formed adult with fully formed thoughts and opinions and morals, that my consumption of this media is not going to affect my worldview and my morals.
No, it isn't.
But there are things that I read that I sometimes go, oh, if a teenager or a child is reading this, this will affect their worldview, and that is a problem.
So, you know how when we went to see the Jujutsu Kaisen movie,
Yes.
there was a lady behind us who asked us what we were there to see, and I was going to lie. Because I don't tell people I do an anime podcast. I don't tell people I watch anime or read manga. I don't really talk to people about it unless I know that there are other people in the scene because of a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I guess my question is, would you like it more if there were less of it? Like,
Less of this stuff?
I think My Hero Academia is 100% improved, 0% like taken away from if you cut Minata out of the damn thing.
Well, I think as we've established, it would be better if he were to die a horrible death on screen.
If he were to never have been written, the manga is improved by leaps and bounds.
No, it would be improved. I agree with Brad. If we saw him like actively crucified, that's people, including me, want. You want to see it finally come to this because we've had all these pervy characters through so many different series, and to finally see one more than just like, oh, they don't like him, he's ostracized. It's like, he's there with the rest of the heroes in all the background scenes. He's always there. They generally treat him when he's not being weird like that. It's like, no, I want the big red button to be hit, and I want him turned to like dust for this case because, to Brad's earlier point, to an extent, like, it happening in one series, whatever, sure, fine, whatever. But when it's like, when I see 10 of something happening semi-problematic, that's when I start going, ugh, you know?
Well, yeah.
That makes it harder to float over because then it doesn't become, this will shape your worldview. It's like, this is systematic of a problem.
I have such a hard time getting people to take anime or manga recommendations. If I ever try to recommend one to, and I'm going to laughingly call them a civilian.
Yeah, no. That's a better word choice than something I would have used.
Like, I wanted to recommend Spy Family.
Yep.
Just to a lot of people. I recommend it generally because I think it is just a great sitcom. I think it is a great comic book. I have to have this conversation of like, it's not one of those animes.
Yeah.
Like, we all know
we know what that means.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's more than the sex aspect to it.
Yeah.
The sex aspect is probably the worst because our culture has big problems with that. But there's also the violence aspect. There's also a racism aspect to a lot of anime. There's, I like with Attack on Titan. There's that weird like
that is still fresh in your mind, bud.
Well, it was like I thought for a long time Attack on Titan was obviously going to be, a criticism of the dangers of fascism or something.
What?
And then it was like
Japan talking about the dangers of
it was
fascism?
like no, fascism is the.
Hey, guess what? Sometimes fascism works.
Yeah.
What? No, you can't say that.
Well, that was and that's kind of the end of
Those
Attack on Titan.
Germans in the 40s had some ideas, didn't they?
But like. The anime community, I don't hear a lot of people talking about that.
Yeah.
I still see a lot of people like cosplaying Attack on Titan, going like talking about all the best fight scenes from Attack on Titan.
Ben,
And
we are outliers.
I know.
I learned this extra hard thinking I had found some anime friends in Derby, and I'm the outlier. I'm the one that goes, what is this edgelord stuff you're watching? Stop. I can't handle it. I don't like it. Like, we're the outliers.
So there's a whole other episode where we get into the fact that I have no shame and why that might be, but
we all draw arbitrary lines.
Yes.
I want to be clear about that because like I don't have a problem with Demon Slayer. I still read My Hero.
My ability, all of our abilities
Yeah.
to float is different. The amount we're able to do it, the topics we will do it over, the topics we will not do it over.
Yeah.
They're different.
Well, and the fact of the matter is,
They're probably different for you, listener, right now from what we feel. Maybe they're more stringent. Maybe they're less stringent. I don't know. As long as you're not breaking the law, at the end of the day, I don't really care.
yeah, and like if
and some laws.
Also, maybe don't wear your freaking Ahagao sweatshirt to the
Jesus.
bookstore with your dad person that I found.
or ever.
I could see somebody who was really ironic pulling it off, but this was not a situation
There's
where
a time and a place.
There's a time and a place, and this was not it, especially with your dad.
But man,
I will cast judgment in this case.
the sad thing is, if Attack on Titan were better, I might still like it. Like knowing that it ends that way, and knowing that it's like, oh, okay, well, I was already kind of half over it anyway.
It's fun. It did not have enough fun bucks
Yeah.
to get you through that, to be like, okay, I can ignore this.
Yeah, but I don't know.
But specifically, I wanted to bring up, like, I think there's an aspect to my lack of shame that comes from the fact that I am out in the world as, you know, a middle-aged man. I have a big beard. I'm bald. Like, I wear polos and jeans. Like, I don't look like a weeb, right?
I mean, a big beard is not.
Agree to disagree.
I guess I was gonna say, like, a lot of weebs do have trouble growing a full beard. Don't
Yeah.
they? Yeah.
It depends on what like era of weave you're talking.
But like more specifically in the fact that I'm out, I have conversations with normies
That was the word I was going to use.
that like are about politics and technology and all these different things. And so at some point when I get to the point to say, oh yeah, I have an anime podcast, those people aren't like looking at me with disgust. It's more questioning. And so they're not making that immediate assumption because
They don't know.
They've known me in a different way first.
They also probably don't know like we do. Like, I also think some of your thing comes from, Brad, is that you didn't meet a lot of anime people growing up.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that, not that I'm saying it's like the worst of the worst, but it's like you've never been to an anime convention.
Right.
You will see the gamut.
But
some of them are great. Some of them are not.
Yeah. I
Some
never
of them are just edgy teenagers. It happens. We've all been there.
I never have a thought of like, how am I going to explain this? I'm always confident in my ability to explain what I have going on and why I like it and what's good about it, you know?
I don't worry about it as much, but I don't. I know. I have known so many people, and I guess I like Kermit said, I was kind of assuming that other people have met the anime people I have met.
Yeah.
And they're going to lump me in with that. And I really don't want to be lumped in with that. I'll give you an example. I don't know if you guys, I work as a software developer. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced like the pod system in software development.
Pod system?
Yeah, it's like they separate people into small teams called pods.
Oh, yeah.
And
I haven't worked in that.
often we're doing that at my place, and it is I can't wait until this fad is over. But you got to name your pod. You have like a team name.
Oh.
And everybody they're doing Marvel characters. We've exhausted all the Marvel characters, and somebody goes, "I think this is the dumbest shit in the world," and somebody goes, "It's the one person I've known her for years. She knows everything about me." She's like, "Ben, do some of those anime characters."
Oh,
and I was like,
Oh, don't out.
I was like, "Oh Christ, no, I will not."
It's a situation where you go, what's anime?
I don't know why you saying
Nani?
that. Like, I have my freaking persona as my wallpaper on my work laptop that my coworkers see when we have inventory. It's not like sauce or anything, so I'm not freaking that insane. But it's like if any of my coworkers asked me about anime, I would shrivel up and die.
Yeah, I was just like, because I feel like I have to have this whole explanation.
I have to be because we're the ones that are too self-aware about everything, so
Yeah.
we feel like we need to be stewards because we know all the like.
I was like,
icky stuff.
I know what you might have heard about anime, but let me tell you,
I'm not that.
I also
swear.
disagree with those aspects.
I guess there's also a point to it of like, it's not my entire identity.
It's
Like,
not my. I mean, I guess
obviously,
it's
I have
enough
a
of it that we've
podcast,
been
right?
watching it together for years, and we have a
Yeah.
podcast. But like, it's not like I have other things besides anime. But it
Yeah.
feels it's the thing. It's of my many lists of things that I keep generally internally due to shame from growing up. It's one of them, and the people around it do not help with that.
I'll tell you the truth. I have the same thing with like the Norse stuff. Like I'm big into Norse myth and all that junk.
Because there's
always
other
have to
connotations that come with it of somebody who looks like you, who's big into Norse stuff. Like
let me just pick all of the most
instantly
problematic groups.
Yeah,
instantly.
I was like, now here's the thing. I know I like anime and Norse mythology, but I am not a white supremacist.
Correct. Yeah. There was a male skater that I came across at one of our mixer games whose name was like a Norse name, and my guard instantly went like, "Which god is that?" And it was like the god of like skating and winter sports. I'm like, okay, you get a pass. Maybe. So yeah, I feel like this ended with a lot of this is like deep seated. Some of it is like what we look like externally to other people.
Was there anything you as the shameless one, Brad? Is there anything you
hit that was too much?
Used to do, but you no longer do?
Oh, that's a good question.
Jeez.
I gotta think about that. Oh, not really, because, and this is probably part of it as well, is that I didn't get really immersed into it until much later in life. Like there was anime that I watched earlier on, but I was never like, oh, I'm gonna go deep into this community and like all of that kind of stuff.
That's the biggest part of it right there. I think that's the biggest part of it.
You have to come to it later.
You don't carry the shame of having been a weeb.
Well, and I should. I
was legit the guy I cringe at.
Yeah, like, I specifically I want to shout out some people here because there's these communities that I'm in now, that anime and manga communities, and these are great people. Shonen Flop, great podcast.
Cool. Yeah,
those are cool guys. Their community is great. Kawaii Disappointment, another great podcast. They're very positive and their podcast is great. These are communities of people who really like anime and manga and are not cringy and weird and problematic.
Well, and I was going to say that is something I've noticed in recent years is that I can tell you, just keeping with Love Hina as an example, Ken Akamatsu, the guy who writes that, he's a big one now who's talking about we don't need the West's political correctness coming into our anime. The conversation is happening, and it is moving in the right direction, I think. Yeah. I think anime has become less problematic as time went on. I
agree with that statement.
I think it's treating women better. I think you went from having like all the women in Dragon Ball being abused to like respected wives and mothers and right. Like everybody settled down and treats them right. And
that hot Majin eats people.
Yeah. But even the tone of Dragon Ball has changed so much. Mm-hmm. And I think it's evolving in the right direction. Like broadly, I have a lot of hope for anime. And that's why the Demon Slayer Red Light District arc was so weird, but it is covering that Taisho era.
That's why I was able to float, because I go, that's just what it was. I'm seeing a historical thing from a different nation than mine.
Yeah.
So long ago that it doesn't matter, and everything's being presented in a very like, it's not looking at it probably. It like that part is the big song of the South for me. It's like no one's acting that this is super problematic, and if I think about it, I can see why it is. But because nobody's acting like it, I can just sort of float over like historical context, and I'm flapping my hands.
I do like the float over term, because I would have said ignore before, but I think that's the way to talk about it.
Because we're not ignoring, we're talking about it, and at the time we talked about it. Floating over is not just, I mean, there's a little closing your eyes, but it's not that you're not aware of it. You're just going, I'm just going to not touch this at all. I'm just going to float right over it.
And I think from my perspective, I would have been more able to float over that if they had taken this character, Tanjiro, who is the most moral and upright person, and gone, hey, look, he hates this whole thing. Like, show me the most moral character having a problem with this thing that's going on that is morally reprehensible.
Yeah, and you could argue, and I'm sure some Japanese people probably would argue that Tanjiro would not see a problem with it.
Well,
the morals of his, that's modern morals.
I should say, I have no particular issue with sex work. It was
that they were owned by the brothel.
It was that they were owned, and then there was children that were also worked in these spaces.
This debt system that they're under, like they weren't.
It was
they didn't want
slavery.
to do that. Yes, it was practically slavery. That was the issue.
Yeah.
If I personally, I think prostitution should be legal and regulated. Like, my personal opinion is that would deal with most of the issues that prostitution has. Now, whether or not that will ever happen in any place other than Nevada, but but the idea that a woman is forced to do that, even if then she's like, okay, I'll do it, and that's consent. But like, no, if there's coercion in that line at all, this is not okay.
Well, and it is a cultural difference. And I don't mean that to say that like Japanese people don't have a problem with it. I think obviously in the modern age, they probably have more in common with our morals than they do with the morals of the past. But like, it's coming up in Akane Banashi now too. She's doing the Oiran piece, and that is something I feel like I had never. Everybody knows about geisha, but right. I didn't know about these systems
and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so that was interesting. But yeah, I think the main thing I would say is it's worth talking about. I
feel like that's the theme of this episode. This is not this is something.
It moves in the right direction. Like I think anime did have a problem, and if anime hadn't changed a little bit, if it was still Master Roshi and still like the panty snatching, that's always been a big thing in anime.
Do you know the SpongeBob episode of that got banned?
Really?
Which, like, I'm surprised it even got made. That thing still boggles my mind.
Yeah, I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, there's like short tangent for this because I only recently learned it was banned and it probably should be. But like usually when there's like here's the really adult episode of the really adult joke in this children's show where it's like, oh, this is very like. They're doing this, but it's very clearly a metaphor for this other thing or symbology for this. And no, like they literally go, SpongeBob and Patrick literally go with Mr. Krabs and they say, we're going on a panty raid. And it's that thing when you're like, this is another example of that whole anime thing. I saw that as a kid and didn't think anything of it. I just heard it. I'd seen Animal House. It just was a thing that happened that was quote unquote normal. And now when I look back on it, I go, what the, how? Yeah. How did that get through? And I know everybody always says they're like, well, this thing got through the censors, but like, this wasn't a one-off joke that you could misunderstand. This was an entire episode stated directly. They break into one of the houses of one of the other main characters they know, and it's just strange. And it's like, but like, it's you're like, if you don't know any better because you're a child, you just float over it because it's just, well, everybody's treating this like it's just a normal thing, so I guess it just is.
Not to talk about this will help Brad's argument that it's in all media, but Words About Books did an episode on Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, and there are a lot of adult or almost adult men. They're probably like 18, 19, 20, getting with like 16, 17-year-old girls, and we kept joking it was a pre-9/11 world, and we didn't know better back then, but to make fun of it when I was editing the podcast together, because my co-host was like, this is so unacceptable. And it is. But I was like, yeah, at the time, though, nobody thought of it that way. And I just found the trailer for Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Oh, yeah. And all of it was gold. I mean, I think their tagline was, everything you ever wanted to do in high school with everyone you always wanted to do it with, and then Phoebe Cates walks out in a swimsuit, and I'm like, oh my god!
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of stuff in the older thing where it's like, oh man, the female teacher's like just hitting on the male student. This is incredible, and how it's like, no, that's not good, and let's
be very clear. Half your age plus 7 is not a law.
It also only applies at like higher levels of age.
Once everyone's over 18, then half your age plus 7.
Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah.
What's the moral of the story?
I think it's the old. I don't remember if this is the moral that we always reached for this, or if it's the moral we always used to reach with Pop Culture Talk Zone. Which, hey, get ready for that second re-release of those. Is just think about it, talk about this.
Yeah, I
be aware. This is not a like. You're on DEFCON alert. Pay attention to all these things, and if you don't say ick at all of them, I don't want to talk to you. But it's like, there's probably things that you do this with. Like, be aware that everybody's a kind of a different thing, and I think it's always good to look internally at ourselves to see these things, but also maybe like Brad, you're one step closer to ascension because you don't have the part of you that cringes. And
What was you saying?
I envy you.
I want to. I think it's very important, and I think the key takeaway here is something that I touched on earlier, which is having things affect you. I think, I don't want to like put my morals on everybody else, although there are certain morals that I think are a line that should not be crossed. But I think it's important when you're consuming any media to say like, how is this affecting me? And if there are problematic aspects to that media, it's not necessarily bad to float over it, but you need to make sure that you aren't internalizing that and having that problematic aspect become okay in real life for you.
Yeah, or have to come down on anybody else for their ability to float over if you can't, which is also totally acceptable. There will be a future Pop Culture Talk Zone re-release about our ability to do that, not with necessarily problematic content, but problematic creators and all that stuff. So
I would say I got two takeaways is like, talk about what bothers you and listen when other people talk about what bothers them. You don't always have to agree.
Right.
Don't get mad. Don't get defensive. Don't get weird about it. Like, if it bothers somebody, then that might be valid.
I think
I like your way of putting it the most, Ben. You win.
I think we had.
It's not a competition, but I'll give you the gold star.
I think we had a really good example of that with the Demon Slayer, the brothel arc, because we went into that. I had a big problem.
It was a reversal because
you guys didn't.
Brad's the ultimate float. He's the ultimate float over guy, and I'm usually the most not float. I'm the heaviest.
But we
just had a complete 180.
We had that happen, and we talked about it in depth.
Yeah, it was really interesting.
I'm not pointing fingers at you guys going, I can't believe you're okay with this, and you're not going, I can't believe you're being such a prude. You know?
I was mostly just surprised because it was a role reversal. I was like, oh, this is weird.
It's the consent. The consent's the thing for me.
Okay.
So we all know that the most problematic of all manga and anime genres is isekai.
It's more problematic than straight up hentai.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
At least this is always my thing with pornographic stuff. At least with those, everybody knows what the ground rules are.
True.
Maybe not the ground rules, but like, we know why you're here. Reality starts bending and breaking a lot more.
Yeah.
But when it's like a facsimile of a story... Yeah, isekai is probably the most problematic of those.
Yeah. So there's this, I'm sure most people are aware, but just in case you're not, there is this very pervasive plot line, maybe would be the right word, that is in so many isekai.
A trope, if you will?
Yeah, that's a good one. Where the protagonist collects a harem. I don't know if collect is the right word,
collect
but
makes me. Speaking of float over, I can't float over that one. That makes me feel icky.
It is what it is.
You're treating them like Pokemon.
Well, it is. You want one of every kind of girl. That's sometimes the whole point of a harem.
That definitely happens sometimes.
This is where I start going, oh no, I make uncomfortable noises into the microphone.
In sort of to my own defense.
Do your best.
I don't
believe in you.
I don't feel like I need to defend myself, but if I was going to call this anything, it would be a defense. The series that I read that have a harem aspect to it, and I touched on this a little bit in the previous segment, all of the girls or women in the harem are consenting to that situation.
Because they were written like that.
Yeah, this is true. But
the author's fantasy is to have a bunch of girls who have consent to sleep with them.
Right, and that's exactly what it is.
Which could be worse.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. True.
The whole thing boils down to this is a fantasy that's a power fantasy. It's a romantic fantasy. It's a sexual fantasy. Whatever it is, this is a fantasy that appeals almost completely to a teenage to young adult male.
Mm-hmm.
I will say that generally speaking, the harem aspect of any of these, I gloss over. I don't really care for it. There are certain parts of it where there's like an actual romance that's going on that I do enjoy. But for the most part, it is just that fantasy of I have multiple women who want to have sex with me. And I don't really care about
spend time around
that.
me, even if I'm a huge asshole, which is usually why
Well,
I hate
no,
them, because
see-
a lot of the time the main characters in these have no redeeming qualities.
That
or
does
very
happen.
few redeeming qualities, and that's why
But-
usually when I see this trope, I balk at it super hard because I'm just like, this is the most, and I guess it's then I come around the thing I do with you with isekais. It's like, this is just a super massive male power fantasy, and it makes me feel icky.
I will say that the ones that I read, the protagonist is a good person.
There you go.
So
that's
it's-
all you need to do for me, man.
Yeah.
Authors, just don't be like, all the girls want him, even though he's constantly mean to them and a jerk, and
Yeah,
he
those
doesn't
ones,
do well
I-
at
it's-
anything.
that doesn't make any
and everybody
sense.
hates him, but this girl really wants to spend time with him, and it's just bullshit. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Although there is a subversion to this trope that I really enjoy, which is where the protagonist, he's super powerful and he like helps people and he's a really great guy, and he basically refuses the harem. There's one girl that he's in love with, and even though he has other girls fawning all over him, he is not going to betray his one true love.
One true. I can dig it. I played Persona. I picked one. You could date them all, but I picked one.
And you know what? I think that's what a lot of this comes down to. There's just so many that you can almost always find an example of one thing or another that you can point to and go, hey, look, the isekai does this. And it's like, that one does, but this one over here does the opposite.
I was like, we're going to need to clarify the pronouns here. There's just so many isekai manga.
Yeah. Isekais with heroines. Okay, when you said it has it subverts it, I just want to get this out quick because it made me start giggling madly to myself. It's not that the main character gets a harem or denies it. It's that as he tries to date each girl, something goes wrong and like she ends up hating him, and they form like a Scott Pilgrim like group of exes that just constantly seek to foil his ability to date anyone, and each of them just keeps joining this growing squad. It's like dating rivals, and we'll act the harem stoppers.
So, not quite the same thing.
harem that works probably better.
Because I will say, I haven't seen that yet.
Because you always tell me these tropes that repeat it a lot, so
Yeah.
I think of like, what are funny ways that you could just turn it,
Yeah.
90 degrees and shake it around a bunch and see what
There is a
weirdness
series.
can fall out of it.
There is a series that I have read some of. I believe it's currently on my like read later list, but it's not an isekai, but it is a just like ridiculous comedy, and the whole point is, so it's a harem slice of life comedy where the protagonist,
Is it also an isekai?
no, it's not.
Okay.
They're high school students.
Okay.
The protagonist guy, it's been so long since I read it, but for whatever reason, it's revealed that he is going to have a harem of 100 girls. And so the story is like, every like 2 or 3 chapters, there's a new girl that comes around, and they all have these weird personality quirks. So, and it's definitely a comedy.
This sounds like parody. This
It's
sounds like
it's exactly it's a
this sounds like
parody
a
of
funny
harem.
bit. Yeah.
So, and I gotta say, like it's pretty funny. It didn't grab me that much. I enjoyed it, but I'm not like, oh, I need to keep reading this. But it wouldn't exist if it weren't for the harem trope. So,
Well, yeah, that's why you parody things that are prevalent in a lot of things. When
Yeah.
they show up a lot, that's the time. If something is around a lot, it means people know about it and they've seen a lot of takes on it, which means it's prime target to take the piss out of.
yeah.
Or just, again, like my thing, turn it 90 degrees and shake it around a bunch and see what falls out.
There is one thing with the isekai though, that I think is probably, if it's not okay, it's right on the line. Like, or rather, if it's okay, it's right on the line of being not okay. And we touched on this a little bit, is the slavery system. Most,
Yep.
I'll say most isekai worlds, these guys go to, they have legal slavery.
Is it really most?
Yeah, I would say most.
Who was that guy that freed all the slaves I talked about last time? Was that Sherman, or am I thinking of somebody else?
John Brown.
John Brown. John Brown freed the slaves in the isekais.
The thing is
Maybe that's
like
what Truxon's up to.
in a lot of these, the protagonist collects a harem because they're slaves, and they do the same thing where they get around the moral gray area by going, oh, they actually love him, right? They're not forced to do it.
This is where the Song of the South comparison comes on the hardest,
Right.
where it's just like everybody seems like they're happy, but it's like systematically, it's like, this isn't cool, guys.
And like you said, they're written that way.
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's one
Is
where
Thomas Jefferson an isekai?
It could be.
that's one where I definitely I'm aware, I'm more aware and less able to float over like this is pretty problematic. Now, the ones where they just go full into it and the slaves are real slaves and they treat them like I don't even read those. Those go away immediately. So as I said before, like the consent is definitely important. But I will say the fact that these people go into these worlds, they have these amazing powers that can move mountains basically, and they're just like, I'll just leave this slavery system in place. That's fine.
Society's the way it
It's
is.
just
You
like,
can't change society, even though you're an all-powerful being. You just have to go fight the Demon King because that's what you're being told. Don't
Right.
change society and all of its problems.
So yeah,
Fight the evil man.
I definitely have a line,
Yeah.
but it's farther than other people's.
I mean,
I guess
you go, Ben. You haven't added too much for this one. I'll let you talk.
Where it becomes a line for me is I guess I spend too much of my free time analyzing writing and stories, and I just can't not picture the guy making it.
Yeah,
That's what
you've
gets
already
me every
described that a
time.
little bit in all of your book stuff. It's like
Yeah.
when you pull the human element in, that somebody sat down and wrote this.
Yeah.
I feel like the less you think about, the more it's easier to flow.
Well,
If you
and
do
that's
that, it's gonna
exactly
be
it.
harder.
Because I never,
Yeah.
ever think about the person who made the thing. You know, when people start talking about,
Just kidding. Just kidding, Rawlings.
oh yeah, yeah. When people start talking about the creator of Harry Potter, I go, I don't like. Yeah, she's awful. Whatever she's doing, that doesn't mean Harry Potter's bad.
There's a line for it with me. I mean, I could still read Harry Potter, but she has done her damnedest to make sure I think about that every time I do that.
Oh yeah, no, that's the problem.
But-
if it was a one-off, we'd probably forgotten it by now. But very adamant.
It's also easier if the author's dead. Like I can read H.P. Lovecraft now.
Oh, yeah,
if he were still
exactly.
kicking around now.
Frankly, I think it's even easier for manga because these are people who have written 2 or 3 manga, maybe, or maybe this is their first. Like, who knows who
They're
they
just some
are? It's just some
yahoos.
random
Yeah.
person, and it's just like, I don't know who this is. I don't care who this is. Half the time, I can't pronounce their name. Like, I'm not going to follow this person on Twitter. You know,
Yeah.
even the series that I'm really into, I barely know anything about the author.
Yeah, it would be easier if they just appeared online. I think my
out of
problem
the
is
ether.
I don't draw as much as I used to, but I used to draw. And I used to want to make comics. If I hadn't gone into what I went into, I probably would have gone to art school. And I've always wanted to write, and I've done a little bit of writing. And so that's the way I approach a lot of this stuff is like, I think about like how cool it is that somebody made something or like all the choices. And I can sort of like picture the process of writing something like this. And I find myself with a manga like that where it involves slavery, in any way, shape, or form, any story that did, I would just picture myself writing something that had to do with slavery and then sitting down to edit it and being like, nope, all of that. Got to get rid of all of that. Because I would just never be able to do it in a way that would get my point across or be sensitive enough. And
Does Japan not have a history with slavery in the way that the West kind of does?
not like chattel slavery, I don't think.
Okay. 'Cause
There-
they definitely like mess with the Koreans a bunch.
Yeah.
But I don't know enough of that history to know if it's to the same extent of
There's-
like the African slave trade.
There's this thing that a lot of the series do where they're like, oh, our slaves are only criminals and debt slaves, and that's it. We don't have like
Indentured
we don't
servants.
go to other nations and like kidnap people and make them slaves.
Still not
It's
cool.
like,
Still not cool.
You know, debt slavery is a way to enslave people that are just poor people.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I don't think anybody would argue. No serious person is going to argue there's any moral form of slavery. But yeah, I think I just don't think I could do one where that's the norm of the world. That would be tough to overlook.
I guess that's another point where, like, I'm not reading any of these and going, maybe slavery's okay.
Well, yeah, obviously
Yeah,
not.
I know exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think either of us think that's the situation.
Like,
Brad.
hey, guess what? The way that they have prison labor that makes things and does work and all that for like pennies. Guess what? That's modern day slavery. That shouldn't exist.
Well, I guess so if I read like
there, boom.
if I read like a Viking saga or something, obviously the Vikings had slaves. I don't look past it, but I float over it in the sense that like these are stories about kings of this time that are far.
Well, and
There's
that's
enough
how-
other things you want to see.
That's how the
Yeah.
isekai try and get away with it by going like, oh, look, this is like a medieval setting.
Unfortunately, it's a modern person in that setting who has
Yeah,
no.
who should know better.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I love Tricks Dedicated to Witches, because there's a bunch of messed up stuff with the society where he's like, this is bullshit. I'm going to
Yeah.
stop. I'm going to actually use my powers to try to put a stop to it. And like, I want more isekai like that. That's
Yeah.
great.
Is Tricks dedicated to witches? Does that have a harem?
I think that's a bonus episode. Because there's some legal ground in either direction for that one, but it's not. I don't want to spend that much time on this episode on it.
I want to see an isekai that has a mature and intelligent discussion of polyamorous relationships.
I want my John Brown isekai where somebody goes there, they get superpowers because it's an isekai, and they rip up a corrupt capitalist system. I'd be about that.
Ben, you
They
know
can
what
get all the people they want to freaking have sex with then. I'm sure they'll be consenting and they'll be a part of the like freaking ragtag crew. It'll be great.
You know what most of
Sells itself.
the harem ones do, and this is beyond any kind of slavery or anything, but a lot of the time they'll sort of hand wave away the harem where they'll have like the women talking to each other, and they're like, "Are you okay with this? Well, are you okay? Yes. Like I can't imagine keeping him all to myself. He's so great." And
I hear in the
A
far off.
person, almost assuredly a man, wrote this. It
I
does not
hear.
matter the character's consent inside of it. A person wrote them to consent. They're not real. They're puppets.
I hear that in the far off land of Utah,
Ha!
you can one man can have many sister wives.
Question if it's ethical to eat Mormons.
Hey, Demon Slayer did that too.
yeah. No, and you know what? That was
Oh yeah, that was
when
weird.
he first
Yeah.
showed up.
That was so
that
weird,
was
and there
what
was
started.
there was
Yeah.
no reason for it in either of the directions because
Yeah.
they never like they could have just been his 3 students. It could have been his sisters. There was no reason they needed to be married because it's not like they ever like here's a sexual relation. It's like that never comes up. Why were they married?
Yeah.
Why
That one-
did he need 3 of them?
That one compounded.
yeah, that one.
Yeah,
That one.
me. That was
I don't
like-
think any of us
yeah.
floated over that one because it's just like. Why?
I was
There's
watching-
no reason to it. Like instantly, it turned me around. I'm like, oh, he's a flashy guy. This is fun. It's like I have 3 wives, and I treat them like a father treats his daughters, and I'm like,
Well, not to
there's
mention
no
that-
reason for this.
that
Why
his
would
whole-
you decide this?
Not to mention his whole introduction was like, "I'm going to kidnap these girls."
Yeah, yeah. It was just like, it never got truly as awful as it could have, knowing anime, but it was just like, why did you decide to write it like this?
What was Taisho era Japan? Do we still have records from this time?
Freaking wild. That's what.
But yeah, I feel like there's so many tropes that this happens with isekai and these fantasy and everything that like if you can't float over it, it's almost like you can't read anything because it's so pervasive.
I'll be honest, it hurts me with isekai. I've been able to, with your guidance, find some isekai that I do like Faraway Paladin. I genuinely liked. Your list of the best ones.
Yeah.
I think this is how heroin addiction started.
Yeah.
The list of the best ones was good. The list of the worst ones was like, I'm out. Almost all of those was like, I think I made the worst one was I think I made it like 2 chapters, and I was like, no,
Not happening.
But yeah, there is just something I have a hard time suspending my disbelief when something is that fantastical, like when it's obviously somebody's like every wish granted. I just I can't suspend disbelief. It's that Matrix thing where it's like the first one was a paradise that was supposed to keep humans happy, but they just didn't buy it. And I was like, that's what it is for me. I need my protagonist to have a little bit of a reality check.
I'm gonna be super honest right now, and I want to be clear. This is just like pure honesty. Morally, this is not something that like
Brad, roll your dice, play your pieces.
And to preface this, I am a happily married man.
If this turns out really bad, if we all just like stare at you and jaws drop, you just edit that out.
There is a part of me as a man, right, that looks at some of these and goes, oh yeah, it would be cool if there was like 3 or 4 women who just really loved me and like wanted to be around me and with me all the time. That would be pretty cool. Now, obviously, there's the actual reality of the situation, which is like that doesn't exist, right?
And also would just be terrible.
I always read these people's stories online about like their polyamorous relationships and stuff, and I'm just like, how does this work? Like, I can understand conceptually that like some people might be able to work in the system, but like for me, the thought of like sharing my wife is like horrible. Like it would drive me insane. But there's the fantasy.
Yeah, parts of your brain get to shut off.
Right.
I'm there. I get it.
Right.
I understand that concept. It's the in fantasy brain land, you can cut on your dinner plate around the problematic vegetables you don't want to eat or the meats or whatever. Yeah. I usually use that as my base of reference because I'm a child and I'm bad at eating my vegetables. But like you get to cut around all the problematic parts, so it's just the part of the cut of the meat, the part of the meal that you want to eat.
Yeah.
And at least, again, as long as they do not cross any of those hard lines, I cannot begrudge anybody for cutting around on their plates to eat the dinner they truly most want to eat.
There's also
in their fantasy time.
Yeah. There's also the flip side of that where my empathetic nature goes like, oh, if I were to be with another woman, that would make my wife feel the same way that I would feel if the situation was reversed, and that would be awful. And that's not something that would be enjoyable, you know?
Well, and the reason I
hate cheaters. Like, that's just so awful. I can't.
Not a big fan of the netorare.
Oh my God. Can I tell you, as far as like genres of pornography go, I hate
the word choice.
NTR.
Yeah.
It is the word. It physically makes me
What is that?
ill.
Netorare.
What is that?
That's cheating.
Netto rare. It's basically boils down to just
this is
cheating.
news to me.
Sometimes it's non-consensual, like there's like rape
okay,
stuff.
Let's stop.
But it's just
new topic.
it's so it physically makes me ill.
Gross.
So that's the kryptonite then to the
Yeah, yeah.
the
Honestly,
isekai perviness.
well, and a lot of the times it's because there is a lack of consent from one party or another.
I think like. For me, the thing that gets me about the isekai harem stuff is versus like a polyamory thing, because I think they're not the same, because the isekai is almost always one-sided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's everybody likes me.
Well, and that it's because he's so powerful and good and does so many good things and how amazing
the
he
fantasy is I wish women wanted me and men wanted to be me.
Yeah.
And he's not the first. Like, Isekai is not the first.
No.
Like,
And that's what I'm saying. Like, I understand
James Bond, Conan the
Yeah.
Barbarian,
Yeah.
these all
Conan.
exist.
I completely understand that fantasy. Like,
Yeah.
I get it. I can put myself in that headspace and go, yeah, that would be pretty awesome.
Isekai just combines.
It's just
like,
not real. It can't be
Isekai
real.
is the male power fantasy. We talked about that a couple episodes ago.
I think the other thing that gets
by
me
and
is
large,
Isekai combines the unmitigated nerdiness of lit RPG with all the toxic aspects of James Bond and Conan the Barbarian.
yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I can see that.
I'm not a big fan of lit RPG, but I understand why it works for some people. Like, I've listened to authors talk about how they write them, and there's a lot that reminds me of Isekai. I know you're not like big on like just walls of text reading, but there is a whole genre out there of people that like manage the points and have like overpowered stats and everything, and they do the math on it.
Ugh,
And
gross.
that's like a big part of the fantasy for the genre, because their readers will do the math.
Yeah,
and if it
I don't
doesn't
want to
add
talk
up,
to any of those people. Storytelling is not math, even though a bunch of people keep thinking it is. It's not.
and I'm not judging. I really,
am.
I think you could like it if you want to like it. But I do, like, for me, it's just like, oh, this is so nerdy.
Well, yeah, and
That one
I mean,
fencing Isekai Road specifically dunks on numbers and math.
I mean, I will say, like, you know, as much as I dislike like NTR, like, obviously some people like that, and you know, as long as that stays fantasy,
As long as you don't talk to me about it.
well, yeah, but as long as that stays fantasy, I don't really see a problem with people enjoying that. I don't. It disgusts me. But like,
What is the opposite of your fantasy? Because that is like betrayal versus
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
likes me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All is well. All is not well.
I don't. On the whole, I don't want to begrudge anybody for liking something. There are, as we said before, there's definitely lines that can be crossed, and
I'll
you go, like,
begrudge
that's
people.
not okay.
I will not police them.
Right.
Well, yeah, there's like the forbidden romance aspect of stuff. Like, for Christ's sake, Romeo and Juliet. Juliet's 14.
Stepbrother,
13.
I'm stuck in the
13,
washer
yeah.
again.
Or was it 12 and 14?
I think
Whatever it was.
Romeo is significantly older than Juliet.
It was the
Yeah.
romance between two young teenagers that left 6 people dead.
Yeah. It's
3-day romance.
yeah.
3-day bender.
And we still like Twilight. I'll always go back to Buffy the Vampire Slayer because I haven't watched TV since Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But
So Kermit, it's been a while, but did we get anything in our mailbag recently?
So it wasn't really a letter.
What?
I did hear more from Truxan. So I was okay, follow me here. I was making a lasagna and I was just putting it together, and there was just something compelling me to hold one of the noodles up to my ear.
What?
I don't know. It's just like I felt this like I would hear something, like there was just some it was this whispering almost. I felt compelled. You know, have you ever had like a compulsion to do something that didn't make any sense?
I mean, constantly, but I don't know. What
Okay, well in this case I was making it, and I held the noodle up to me and I heard Truxan. He was talking to me. So it turns out
you heard his voice.
I heard him speak to me. I heard his voice.
Okay.
Which I guess now confirmed what he sounded like to me, but he did tell us that my rendition of it was correct.
For whatever reason, I'm not surprised.
I think because he already talked to me. I think he talked to me through the sauce in my fridge last time, right? I want to say that was what he did last time.
You got a note.
I got a note.
It wasn't
in the
a
sauce.
letter, but it was a note.
This wasn't a note. This was his voice. I think he's able to do this because he's most in tune with his Italianness. Because from what he's described, so the situation was that he was the truck that stopped the truck from killing you.
Well, that's good to know. And I don't know if he can hear this, but thank you very much. I really didn't want to die.
Yeah, good point.
again,
So after that, the organization wanted him dead, so he used the last little power in his broken truck to isekai himself to a random other world.
Wow.
This
I didn't
thing
know
that
it could work
he's
that
been
way.
sending other people to.
A state of pure marinara.
And now what he's describing to me is an isekai world that is essentially like Italy, like when he grew up.
Oh, so heaven.
Or at least how the old country to him. So he's very, in the spirit of that kind of
Wait,
stuff.
I thought he was from Brooklyn.
The old country, like this is his parents grew up there. You know how it is with them, and talk about the old country. I don't know. I'm not Italian.
Forget about
it. I'm walking here. But at least for right now, it seems like he's having a grand old time. There's not like, at least from what he's described, there's not any of the normal like isekai things. There's no like, at least that he's heard yet. You might just be at the starting village. There's no like big bad demon king. There's no like.
And we're
quest.
sure
He's just been like chilling out. He's been like eating a bunch of food. Like he's been strolling the countryside. Like,
and we're sure he's not just dead and like speaking to you from beyond the grave.
no. He was
Because that
very
sounds like heaven.
he was very clear that he was still alive.
Is heaven an isekai?
Maybe.
Ooh, big questions. Big questions, my dude. But no, he seems to be doing well. I personally don't know how long he's going to be able to like keep himself entertained. Supposedly, enough of his truck came with him that survived that he's hidden away that he's still able to get our podcast.
Oh, he's got the radio.
It's a dimensional radio.
That's amazing.
So he's still able to get our podcast. So I'm hoping I'm gonna ask him this week directly on the podcast because like it was kind of difficult to talk back through the noodle. It's not like it was like it wasn't a shape for that. It was more like a conch shell than like a phone, shape. So I guess here, this is Truxen. Can you please attempt to send us a letter again? Obviously, I don't know necessarily how you're going to do that, but your truck can somehow receive our podcast. So try your best to send us a letter for next episode to tell us how you're doing more directly so we can read it to the listeners. We would really appreciate that. We're really glad to hear that you're doing great. It sounds like he's getting a much-deserved vacation.
Yeah.
So I just
really appreciate the save there. I'm glad you're not dead.
I just really
Probably.
hope everything's okay because I feel like if there was anybody who could jump through universes to get you, it's the organization.
Well, and
everything sounds like it's going too chill for like they don't usually let people get away.
I was just thinking,
disable the truck's interdimensional GPS.
Since Truxon is not here anymore,
He's not on Earth.
am I in danger?
What?
Almost certainly.
I think he took all the heat off of you.
I haven't seen any trucks around, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're not being monitored.
I think right
Maybe
now
because
they're
we
hunting
have
for him. I think he took all the heat for the situation.
Potentially, but maybe because we stopped talking directly about the organization. Now we're talking about.
Well, they're not going to get his letters anymore. If you can
cool
hopefully
thing. Yeah.
send something. Truxon's cool.
Yeah.
Talk to me through some freaking lasagna. He's cool. He saved your life.
Yeah. Well, we can say
he ran over all those nerds.
The organization probably doesn't exist. Right?
Yeah. What is that? I don't know what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Hi.
Wink.
Dang it, Ben. Dang it, Ben.
Oh, dang it. I said the quiet part loud.
ご覧のスポンサーでお送りします。
Guys, we have got a sponsor.
Oh my gosh, we're hitting the big time.
And honest to goodness, I guess it's not
It's
really
not a
sponsor.
parody.
It's not an actual sponsorship, but we got an affiliate.
That's a sponsorship enough in my book.
So I want to shout out Sugoi Mart.
What is Sugoi Mart?
Sugoi Mart is an online retailer of Japanese snacks, candies, toys, and merch. So they got all kinds of different stuff.
We love those things.
Yeah. It's a really cool place if you want to get your hands on Japanese stuff that you can't really get here. Their candy selection is out of this world.
Oh.
They have like all of the flavors of Kit Kat. I don't know if you guys have seen that.
Okay, I'm actually excited.
Yeah.
I just saw the Game Grumps
there's
try
like
to eat all of them and get sick.
Yeah. There's like 12 different flavors of Pringles.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm interested.
It's insane.
Fascinating.
So
Fascinating.
as I said, we have an affiliate link. That'll be in the description. If you use that link, you can get 15% off, and that also helps us.
Oh my gosh, I feel like a
So-
true podcaster now. This is incredible.
You should definitely go check that out. If for whatever reason you can't get that link, you can use the code APR15.
Anime podcaster reincarnation?
15.
And when you use that code or the link, that also helps us out. So please go check them out. Stay tuned because they sent us some stuff. We're going to do an unboxing video, and we're going to have a good time with that. So check that out. That'll be on the YouTube channel.
Yeah. Animator podcaster reincarnation 15.
Yeah. Once again, thanks to Sugoi Mart. We look forward to working with them and getting some cool merch and more so the snacks.
More snacks.
The snacks
More
are
about the snacks. I can't eat a shirt, but I can eat snacks. I mean, I could eat a shirt, but it'd probably be a bad idea.
Itadakimasu. Tabemashou.
Guys, what's it time for?
Anime Watch Club. Anime Watch Club. Hey! This is the quality you get when I'm coming up these off the dome.
No, that's good. That's good.
Thank you.
That's good. So we had an interesting time with our series that we're going to be talking about today. We watched this, not the whole thing, a couple months ago when we were sort of in between some series that
Before
were
the
coming
Golden
out.
Age season we had.
Yeah, and that is Konosuba.
Konosuba.
Now, Kermit and I had watched Konosuba like back in the day, and we both enjoyed it, and so we wanted to introduce it to Ben. And so we started watching, and we had an interesting time with it. I'll say personally, and Kermit might have some other thoughts on here, but it didn't really strike me the same way that it did originally.
I think a little bit of it is that we kept thinking it would kick in sooner than it does.
Yeah.
Also, I think the major thing that from your opening description and seeing it now, I think I always thought that like Konosuba was like parody, and then I was like less sure of that on the rewatch.
Yeah.
I think Ben being there and me constantly going like, it's a parody, it's a bit, this is a B movie.
There was definitely
And
a
then
lot.
I wasn't sure, even though that's what I thought it was before.
There was definitely a lot of going like, oh, this part's coming up. That'll be the thing
That'll be
that'll
when
get
it
you.
turns into the
And
thing
then
it's supposed to
it
be.
just sort of took a long time. And it wasn't how I remembered it.
I feel like you guys did not tell me this is how you felt as I was watching it.
So I would say I think my memory of it is compressed. That there are beats that it hits that are really funny and interesting, and I really only remember those parts. And on rewatching, there's like one or two an episode.
You know what? I'm going to have not a major revelation, but a revelation. I think I watched Konosuba before you became Isekai Sensei-Sama,
Well,
so
yeah.
I didn't have a very intimate knowledge of a bunch of isekai things via osmosis, and I feel like because I know the tropes a lot more, what Konosuba was doing was a lot more like, okay, we got to do the thing, and it wasn't as like, wow, this is a fresh thing that I haven't seen yet.
Yeah,
personally.
There's an aspect of it that sort of feels like one of those in other genres where there's like a pioneer of something that when you go and rewatch it after everything else has done that thing, I get what they're doing, but it doesn't hold the same weight that
Yeah.
it did when it was the first one to do it.
My ultimate example for me personally of that is, I think it's the Nightmare on Elm Street, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, I think it is, where it's like the first time horror movies at the time are experimenting with meta. And at the time it was like groundbreaking because nobody did really any meta stuff. And now it's like watching it with modern eyes, it's like, this is the most like clown shoes, like on the nose. It's like, yeah, we've been doing meta for ages. We're kind of out of that era now, even we did it so much. But to look back at the first one, it's just like, guys, what are you doing? Like, we've gotten better than this since then.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was more either at the time or just on our own experience level of what we had seen and had not seen at that point. But
Yeah.
Well, so do you still think that Konosuba is parody, or
I don't know anymore.
I do,
I don't have
yes.
enough strong enough feeling to go back to it. I think if I was gonna go back to a similar series, I would probably watch Combatants Will Be Dispatched, because that gets to what it's doing. That got to what I loved about Konosuba a lot quicker, which is here is a dumb pervy male lead and a bunch of really, like, everybody here is shit, and we're gonna have fun dumb adventures. And I feel like Combatants Will Be Dispatched was like a lot more gung-ho about doing that than Konosuba was, because it was the same, I think, the same guy?
Yes.
So it's like they took all the things he learned, he took all the things he learned from Konosuba and just made a more souped-up version of that in a different setting.
And I think that sort of is my main takeaway, is that if you, I think I can still recommend Konosuba to people who are fans of comedy and isekai, and not necessarily isekai, but comedy in general.
And have a good ability to float over some kind of pervy stuff every now
Well,
and then.
and
That seems kind of needless.
A lot of the time, the pervy stuff is the joke, in that people aren't okay with it.
it seemed over the top
It
in
is-
an
it
intentional
can
way?
definitely be that.
Well, in an intentional way, that, like, I don't think it was meant to be sexy. I
Yeah.
think it was meant to be just over the top,
Right.
kind of.
I think it needs to be watched. I think it needs to be binged, at least the first season.
I was going to say, I thought you were going to say, I think it needs to be more over the top now. I think it's become too
Yeah, the way we were,
normalized via time that it to truly reach what it was. And that's why I say Combatants Will Be Dispatched, because it's a lot of the same character archetypes with more stuff going on cranked up, where it's just, again, it's the thing I loved about Konosuba the most, was not the isekai portions or when it tried to be serious too much of it. It's like, here's a bunch of chuckle fucks getting together and going on a quest, and they maybe somehow squeak it out at the end, even though everybody hates each other in a funny way, which is not usually how
well,
I
right.
feel
The
about things.
comedy comes from the fact that they're all awful.
Yeah, it was kind of
but
like
not
it's,
like
and it's always sunny in Philadelphia.
I was
right?
gonna
Yes,
say, it's not.
yes.
It's
Yeah.
not. I don't think it's quite like that, because there's like, I mean, maybe I haven't seen enough Always Sunny to know if there's like a small silver lining of endearingness every now and then.
They're never allowed. Like, Charlie has a silver lining.
Yeah.
but they're usually, the gang is not allowed to win.
Okay, they're never like full on awful, but they're just like, it's the. I will always say Konosuba is the truest experience of playing D&D with your friends, where it's just, there are a bunch of weirdo murder hobos. Everybody's got the thing they specialize in. They're not good at anything. Like, here is the bit.
I would have, if it was supposed to be like a straight up parody, I would have characterized the main guy a little differently.
Yep. I don't like, especially on my rewatch. What's his name again?
I don't know.
I knew
his
it at
name.
some. I know his name. I've heard. It's in my head somewhere.
Kazuma.
In my
Kazuma.
head,
Kazuma.
Kazuma's gotten.
Kazuma Desu.
He's got some. Yeah, especially going back to it, it's like, this isn't the Kazuma I remember. He's worse, and maybe he gets better in time. I don't know.
I feel like the way that we watched it with Ben, where we were watching one a week, it didn't have the time in 26 minutes once a week to sort of get us to where it needed to be.
We watched a bunch of episodes though. Like, even as we got later, it still felt like we were like, "Oh gosh,
Yeah.
Ben,
I think
Ben doesn't like this."
We got
I don't
to
know
like
what
episode
I think you guys
are
5
being
or
good then.
something.
I think you guys are being harder on it than I was going to be on.
Well, I'm
Yeah.
glad to hear you say that, because
Yeah.
I still remember it fondly, and I think that if I rewatched it again and watched 3 episodes in a row, or something like that, that I would get that same feeling again.
I think Ben not liking it because it was big, like, oh no, my cool big brother's watching this with me. This thing that I said was really cool, and now it's not as cool as I remember it being, and now I'm embarrassed.
There was a bit of disappointment on that end. Like I said
because
before,
we were selling
we were
it.
like,
So, like, 'cause
oh,
we-
this part coming
'cause
up,
we
this will
teamed
be...
up. Brad and I teamed up about an isekai being great.
Yeah, that never happens.
Which was why it was just like, and then Ben was just like, yeah. And we're like, oh gosh, maybe we were wrong.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a couple of things. Very, very, very few pieces of Japanese media have ever made me laugh. For as much as I like about Japan and as much as I like Japanese stuff, Japanese comedy does not really work for me. I rarely find it funny. So I think one of the only things that has actually made me laugh out loud is Spy Family. And so I didn't probably laugh out loud. If you were if you were expecting me to, that's not uncommon for anime. I think Kazuma is a little too I want to say there's like a cross between like he's a little too mean.
Yeah.
He needed to be a little more of that like Kazuma des would have been nice. Like a little more of that like dry
personally,
humor.
I think it gets to there.
Yeah.
It becomes more there. And
Yeah.
sometimes he
Yeah.
comes off a little harshly, but yeah, he's definitely a lot meaner in the beginning from what I remember.
Yeah, he was just a little too mean. But like I was surprised I didn't find is her name Aqua?
Yeah.
Aqua.
I didn't find her annoying, and I really was afraid I might.
Well, she does get more annoying.
I did not. You guys were like warning me about her. And
Aqua is the Brita of Konosuba.
is that a
That's a
pun?
community reference, which now both of you making blank faces, which means I shouldn't
No,
have made that reference.
I got
it's not
it.
helpful. Okay.
All I'm getting is Brita filter.
No, there was a character in Community, and there was a bit later on that she was the worst. Like literally in universe, like Brita's the worst,
Oh, okay.
and that was like part of the bit.
But yeah, I didn't hate her. The paladin probably came the closest to making me laugh. The idea that there is a paladin that is a masochist.
Yeah.
That literally can't hit anything. Not that
Yeah.
they do not try. Literally, if they swing a sword, they will miss.
Yeah, I really liked that. I thought that was funny. I thought Aqua was funny a couple of times. Yeah. The girl sorcerer made me laugh. Not
Megaman.
laugh. Yeah, she got me a couple of times. I am not as big into the.
Oh, and it's darkness is the paladin.
Yeah, Darkness the Paladin.
Yeah, I'm not as
my
big into
favorite.
the like. I don't
Her
even.
real name is La Latina.
Well, there you go. I remember that.
I don't know how to characterize the girl, Megami.
Megami.
I don't know how to say what I want to say here, but there's a certain personality quirk she has of like being very extra.
Oh, it's the Shinyobi thing.
Shinobi?
Am I saying? I'm not saying that right.
What is that?
That sounds
Eighth
right.
grader syndrome.
Chunyobi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What is
Is
that?
that what I didn't I say that?
Chin.
You might have. I don't know what that word means.
It's basically like middle schoolers
Middle
who are
schoolers.
like sort of seriously doing stuff like, oh, this power that burns within me.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
kind of
yeah,
like,
even though they're children.
yeah.
And they're dumb because they're children, as we all were.
The
Dumb and children.
That's obviously the joke. It actually that is one particular thing that I really enjoy because as you get farther into the series and you meet like her family and her clan and all them, the Crimson Demons, they're all like that, even the adults, and it's hilarious.
Okay, that might work. Yeah, I had a harder time with her because I did hang out with anime people when I was in high school, and they did act like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they,
And-
they did not
and the-
realize that people don't act like
And
that.
she, and by proxy her family, are a parody of that.
Yeah, I think my problem was I've known people who thought that was more charming.
That it was being played
No.
straight. Because
And
there's
I
like a lot
think-
of people who
Yeah.
a lot of people that I've known that Megami is their favorite of
Well,
the cast,
right.
and I just
And-
don't get it.
I think that's part of the joke. When you are in these anime communities and there are people who are like, "Oh, Megaman's my favorite. Oh, Aqua is my favorite," or whatever it is, like the joke is that those people are taking that seriously and they shouldn't be.
Yeah, that's why I don't trust. Usually, if people say their favorite is Megami, I do not trust them.
Yeah.
The danger with all satire is that there is a group of people out there that does not know it's satire.
Correct. Yes, and I would say Konosuba is probably prime territory for
Yeah.
misreadings of it.
It definitely skirts the line where you go like, is this serious? And personally, I think the answer is no. It's not.
I think of all of them. I think of the trio Darkness as the easiest to read as a gag.
Yeah.
Without having to
Yeah.
like notice through it. Megami seems like you could play that straight in a straight thing, but it's like you can't put Darkness in a straight laced show and have it not be this giant thing. Like that's how you know it's more like that's when you finally get like, oh, this is, and the word I would very specifically choose is a farce. This
Now,
is a farce.
To be fair, you should be able to pick out that it's satire just by like
I don't think so.
watching the world around them, especially like they go into the guild and there's like a restaurant. The guild window woman is basically not wearing a shirt.
I do not think that
tough to
reads as
tell with
parody.
anime.
I don't think you
I
can,
get what you're saying.
I think the onion ate. I think the world ate the onion.
I mean, quite potentially.
in this,
but I
in
think
general cases, but very specifically in this case,
as
I think it doesn't read as satire as much anymore because isekais have become that.
True enough.
That are playing it more straight.
But as an adult of the world,
I'm
that
so
is the-
worldly reading all these isekai in my home.
I actually agree with you.
that's the thing that you should look at and
Yeah.
go, oh, I see.
I actually agree. I think for me, what I was looking for the whole time when you guys told me this was parody, and I was like, I know people who have been recommending Konosuba to me, and I did not watch it because they recommended it.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm very skeptical that this is intentional parody. But
Yeah.
I do think the best evidence for that is with Darkness. It would be she's sexualized, but nobody's attracted to her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest argument for satire is
she's
that
out there living her best life.
she's out there basically like orgasming every time she's getting beaten
especially
up.
Kazuma, who is
Yeah.
quintessentially like a horny teenage boy.
Yeah.
And he's got Aqua, who might not be wearing underwear, and he's got Darkness, who is like
A massive pervert
right
all the time.
And like he's not. I mean, there are times when he is perverting on.
but it
towards
never
them.
feels like it's a relationship,
Right,
Or
but
anything
most of the
that's
time-
specific to them outside of them. Like
Right.
they're just the traveling. They are who is present.
And most of the time, he's sick of them.
Yeah.
yeah,
He's like so done with this.
because they're a bunch of
These
weird. They are a
idiots.
collective
Right.
of weirdo idiots.
Yeah.
I
Now-
just don't think it's as far, and especially like I said, combatants will be dispatched the kind of not same universe follow up where it's like that one character who's like she needs to be pushed around a wheelchair because she can put out curses on people, but there's a certain chance they will backfire, and she attempted to curse someone that they could never wear shoes and it backfired, so she can never wear shoes. So instead of just walking around on her feet, she is pushed around in a wheelchair because she refuses to walk without shoes. And it's like that's more akin to the Darkness thing. It's like this is clearly a comedically made character.
I definitely
this is
think-
a bit.
I think we're in a different world now than when this
Yep.
was originally made.
Big agree.
Because like when it first came out, you know, it had parallels to a lot of different anime, but it sort of like went over the top and was a bit more. It was a bit more obvious that this satire. Whereas we've sort of moved to this
The
point.
top has been moved, so
Right.
when it goes over the top, it just sort of goes up a little bit instead of like, wow, look at this, what is clearly a parody farce, and it's not as clear anymore because freaking the world shifted around it.
Well, that's all comedy age is like milk. So
Well, I guess it's different than like the
Except
normal
Mel
like,
Brooks.
oh, we used to think this was funny, and now we don't from like a societal standpoint, and it's not necessarily society. It's just like other media that is playing straight is using the pieces that are present in this.
Yeah.
So it's not as clearly
well, I think
a
like
parody.
some of it, like some of what was edgy, that is part of the problem. Is some of what was edgy and over the top is no longer edgy and over the top. Like
Yeah.
having the barmaid come out in like a micro bikini. People do that now, unironically,
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
in their
exactly.
isekai. So it's like, I'm sure the guy, if he did intend that to be a parody, is shaking his head at that now. He's like, I tried. How do I reach these kids?
Yeah.
But no, I could read it as parody. I think it's believable. I think it wasn't laugh out loud funny, but I wasn't put off and I wasn't bored. I don't know if I would want to like sit down and intensely focus on a marathon of Konosuba.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm interested in going back to it to at least
Yeah.
keep what memories remaining.
But I could put it on in a background. I could definitely,
You could rock that.
yeah, I could see Konosuba. I don't think it's like my strongest recommendation ever,
Yeah.
but and I do think from what I have encountered, it's like you said, I think there's probably just too much of it.
Yeah. It
Like
What,
I've heard there's
if there was-
and a couple movies.
yeah.
If there was an abridged version, at least of the first season.
You want a Kai version of it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Abridged has other connotations.
Well, yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's a good point.
becomes
The
something else.
actual meaning of abridged,
yeah.
a supercut, if
Which
you
is
will.
Kai now. That's the shorthand.
Right.
If you want to time skip, it's Shippuden.
I think if you could get through the first season in like 2 hours, then that would be like, and not necessarily all at once, but like that would be the proper amount of time for as much as it has in it. I think the later seasons are a bit more turned up, where it's sort of more packed together, almost like it had to.
There's more
it
of
had
a
to
running
ramp up
story
to
than like thing to
Yeah,
thing to
yeah.
thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say from what I'd seen, and I don't know how many episodes we watched. Was it like?
I think it was like 5.
Yeah, 5 or 6 sounds about right.
Yeah, I would say like I don't know if it's all like those 5 or 6. I don't know how it would sustain itself for seasons and movies, and I personally don't have an interest in watching a Konosuba movie, but maybe
The Konosuba movie.
You have, like they
it's
start
just a
traveling
really long
outside of the city
episode.
to other places. There's more Demon King stuff that shows up, and they have to deal with those problems. Like there's new people that we haven't met yet. That
so
but
We
not
didn't
like
get to the
that
part
much.
where Kazuma starts dying constantly and having to be resurrected. That's hilarious.
that would help me because I
Yeah.
don't like Kazuma. That would help.
Yeah.
I guess you don't have to give spoilers since this is a recommendation, but does it have an ending?
I don't know if the actual series does, because from what I understand, there was talk of more seasons after the movie came out. I don't know if that's still going to happen. So I think there is more story to be told.
Okay, because that would be another problem for me. Is if we've touched on this a lot in heroin addiction, but like a problem I've had with a lot of manga, and the reason I don't get into as many manga anymore, is it is very easy as a writer to build infinitely towards an end and then never end.
Just stops.
So like if you're gonna start building towards like they're gonna actually fight this Demon King, they're gonna actually do what they came there to do. If you never get there, then that's just annoying to me. It's more annoying than if you kept it as a sitcom where they reset to 0.
I mean, honestly, I think a setting like Konosuba lends itself more to that sort of indefinite nature.
Yeah.
Because comedy, situational comedy.
If you can reset it back
can
to
do that.
0,
Yeah.
It kind of does in some ways, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, to an extent. There's definitely somewhat of that where they're able to overcome some big obstacle and they get rewarded for it. It was the cabbage thing.
Yeah.
I
I liked the cabbage thing.
They like dealt with the cabbage issue and saved the town, except half the town got destroyed, and so the earnings that they made from the cabbages had to go to repair. And it was like, oh, we're rich, oh, we're poor.
I do like that sort of thing. I think that's where Konosuba would be best, is like a long running sitcom. Yeah. I would give a light recommendation.
Yeah. Light recommendation is probably the right word for this.
It has admittedly been a while since I've seen it as well. I would instead recommend, if you can find it, because I think Brad is the only human who has ever talked to me about Combatants Will Be Dispatched. Watch, if you can find it, wherever the heck it is, watch Combatants Will Be Dispatched. It's 12 episodes. If you like the sort of general japery of Konosuba, but you want it in like a more like condensed, like high... this is the next version of heroin kind of thing. Go check that out. All of the main cast are all a bunch of dum-dums again, but they have 2 major traits instead of just one, and I think they play off of each other well. And it's not an isekai. They're on like a weird sci-fi planet. There's some weird it's really weird and dumb, if I remember correctly, but like in a fun way. So I would say go check that out, and then tell me if it's good, and then I'll agree with whatever you say, because it's been a while since I've seen it.
I think the first season is best consumed. The first season of Konosuba is best consumed lightly. So
And read the light novel. That's what he means.
you might benefit from watching 3 episodes at a time, but like don't go into it going, okay, I need to like pay attention and this is important.
Yeah, no.
I think though, by the time you get towards the end of the first season, there's probably enough there that will hook you. it seems
Just give it 12 or 13 episodes.
in
you just
rewatch,
have to watch the entire first season.
well, unfortunately,
Yeah.
In rewatch, it seems to take some time to ramp up.
You can't tell me, a human, that if I don't get an anime, if there's no hooks in me in the first 10 to 15 minutes,
If you are Kermit,
I will rage quit.
I am not recommending this to you.
Good.
I was-
even though I already watched it almost.
I was way angrier watching Boji.
Yes.
Well, yeah.
Hey, sometimes strong negative emotions are still strong emotions. They're better than apathy.
The highs of Ranking of Kings are higher than the highs of Konosuba.
I'll
but
give
the
you that.
Lows
Yeah.
of ranking
are
of Kings
way lower.
Yes.
And that's the end.
Go away, it's over.
we have wrapped on episode 15.
Woo.
We hope everybody enjoyed listening. As always, we have a lot of fun doing this, and we really hope that everybody enjoys listening to it. This was a bit of a more serious episode to an extent.
As I giggle to myself as you say these important things.
We burned out on the seriousness. Now
Yeah.
there's only silly, and it's time to
We
get
used
out.
it all up. But just to reiterate, some things are wrong, and it's okay.
And you will
if-
be judged.
It's okay if you ignore them.
You float over them.
You float over them. Don't ignore. Float.
Float.
What's the Modest Mouse song?
We'll all
We'll
float
float
on
on.
okay.
But yeah, let us know what you think. If you've got, I'm sure everybody listening to this has opinions on what we talked about because it's an opinionated episode.
It's a bit of a hot button topic.
So, reach out to us and let us know what you think. We have a lot of ways to do that.
Do you want to see Minata crucified and reduced to atoms? Tell us about it. We'd love to hear it.
I'd
So
love to hear that.
you can contact us in lots of different ways. We have the website, animepodcastreincarnation.com, where we post the episodes and you can leave comments up there. There's also other reviews and articles. Ben has a couple up there recently, pretty good articles on stuff. Actually, a recent article, a somewhat review of a book about Western Japanese culture kind of thing.
Pure Imagination, How Japan Built the Modern World
Yeah.
by Matt Alt.
Matt Alt actually reached out to us to let us know that he appreciated that
What?
review.
Yeah.
I missed this. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
You were cruising the high seas
I
when
was
that
away. I was
So,
in international waters.
Shout out to Matt Alt. We might have him as a guest at some point. So hopefully we can make that work out. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, check out the website. You can also reach me on Twitter at Isekai Sensei. Ben and Andrew also have Twitter handles that they are not looking at anymore.
I'll see them, but I just won't respond because I don't know how to use Twitter. Also, it's on fire, but mostly the first part.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm keeping track of it, but unless it's one of those days where you got to set it to private to talk to anybody, I don't
just
know
one
what he's
of those
doing
days.
anymore. Yeah.
So that's at Benbo Swaggins
Yes.
and at Kermit D. Grog.
Sure is.
But if you actually want to talk to them, it's best just to send me a message and I'll let them know.
And if you want to talk to Truxan, you can also send Brad a message in the ways that we just talked about.
I thought you were gonna say you could make a lasagna.
I mean, you could, but I don't think he's paying attention to everybody's lasagna making, so.
Not yet.
And as I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, a good way to contact us, is email, just like Tobias did. Again, shout out to Tobias. That email address is isekai-sensei-sama@gmail.com. You can also check out our YouTube channel where we post the episodes as videos. It's not actual video, it's just the audio, but it is in high quality stereo. And so you can leave comments on the YouTube videos there. And as I said earlier, we're probably going to be having an unboxing there of a box we got from Sugoi Mart. Once again, thanks to Sugoi Mart. You can find that affiliate link in the description or use code APR15 to get 15% off. and that YouTube channel is That Time I Got Reincarnated as an Anime Podcaster. You can check that out. We're also on Facebook. You can just search for That Time I Got Reincarnated in the same world as an Anime Podcaster, and you can follow us on there. You can also find us on Patreon. We're Anime Podcaster Reincarnation on Patreon, and you can go out there and, you know, toss us a couple dollars if you want to show your support. We're looking for feedback on Patreon for the tiers. If there's like particular tiers that you would want to see, like some particular prize or benefit
you want access
from
to the Discord to see Ben complaining about the Japanese language that he's learning.
That's right. We might want to open up a Discord to everybody else and have that community come spread out. But let us know if that's something that you want. Ben, you got anything else going on you want to plug?
I guess you could check out my other podcast, Words About Books. Some of you have actually been doing that. I've been watching the numbers. When this one goes up, the other one goes up. So I appreciate that. I don't know when this episode comes out, but soon we are going to be covering Spy Family as literature.
Ooh.
So
Whoa.
I finally convinced my
get.
fellow bookmen to read it. So
Nice. Well, make sure to plug this podcast on that episode.
I will. We haven't recorded yet, so.
Andrew, you got anything you want to plug?
I'm here. Listen to me here. Also, I guess more importantly, listen to the old episodes of my podcast when they get posted in this feed, Pop Culture Talk Zone. I'm very proud of all the ones we did, especially on even this re-listen year or more later. So go check those out. They're good stuff.
So once again, that'll do it. Thanks for listening. Again, we really appreciate it. Don't forget to let us know what you think. And if you'd be so kind as to rate us on every single podcast platform, that'll help us out a lot. And, if you end up in another world where slavery is accepted, please use your newfound powers to abolish it.
Who are we? Like this gets you every week.
Yes. I stopped.
Wait, let me check my notes. No, it has in fact gotten me.
Any episode can be somebody's first episode, and right now we're being real mean to them by being real inside jokey.
I'm cutting this out.
Good. I just said I'm politely going to speak it me. I'm still loving that lesson that I learned. I need everybody to know that Moshi Moshi was based on a film. This is something Ben taught me. That was a very Japanese polite way to say I'm going to speak that the operators would say, and then Kermit Desu was just mostly saying it me. I'm going to speak it me.
My kanji learning app has Moshi Moshi in it, and it just, the definition they give for it is telephone hello.
Telephone hello, it me.
You should probably go in the Discord.
I
pasted
swear
the
I
whole
check
thing.
everything.
You do, because you post on it a
Yeah.
lot, so I don't know why you didn't see that one.
I'm always there complaining about like fan subs.
Yeah. Being an old man.
I'm going to cough now.
I consent that you can cough in my home, Ben.
You shouldn't.
What? I'm behind a wall. I'm safe.
It's not that anime avatars are necessarily problematic.
No, it's not. I mean, it's the same thing with What I don't even know if this is podcast. I don't think this is podcast. It might be in the future, but it's not right now. It's like what Ben said with the Norse stuff. It's like on its own, that's not problematic. But it is usually the type of person who's into that a lot is usually indicative of some other problematic things.
I almost never start with, hey, I have an anime podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't want anybody to know about that, even though, like, that's the weird thing is it's like, I'm proud of it. I enjoy the work we do.
Well,
but,
that's
like,
what I'm saying. It's like,
unless somebody goes to me like, I love your podcast, I go, oh.
It's
I'll
after
probably go hide.
people know me
Yeah.
to some extent.
Learn that I am not,
Right.
I'm a weirdo, but not in that way.
Yeah. Oh, Isekai.
That was the end of that thought,
Yeah.
apparently.
Oh, Isekai.
I trailed off. I was like, I'll just be making the same points over and over again.
I'm going to close this segment by telling a story that has nothing to do with anything, that just, by the way you said, oh, Isekai, that it reminded me of something. So long ago, back when I watched wrestling, I don't remember his name, but there was a comedy wrestler from Japan who's one of his major gimmicks besides being a bald weirdo was that he would pull baby oil out of his trunks and oil himself up and his opponent to become like slippery. It was like a bit. And he had a move.
A bit, you say?
A bit. It was a joke. It was a jape. And he had a bit. This is perfect for like end of podcast fodder. Where he had a move. I don't know how many times they did it. That he put the baby oil on the top rope and would slide his opponent balls first on the top rope. And it was called the hentai slide. And it's really funny. What makes it really funny, because he may or may not have knew what he was saying, but there's one of the older announcers, Tony Schiavone. I still have the audio clip in my head of him going, "Oh, sweet hentai." And it's like, that man might know, like, that man knows some nerd things, but he might not know that, so I don't know if he knows what he's saying. And thinking, the way you said, "Oh, isekai," reminded me of that. And it was just... If I can find the clip, Brad, I'll send it to you to include with this segment at the end of the podcast, because that's what I think about. Is a man that may or may not. It's a very Schrodinger's cat situation where he genuinely may know what he's doing, and I don't know, and that's where the magic comes from.
I agree. Enough of the cute stuff.
That's how you win matches, is by beating the man down, wearing the man down. More baby oil again.
This is what they call, I believe, the hentai slide.
Oh, that hurts.
Oh, hentai.
That's going to hurt your yightsies right there, I'll tell you that.
Call me on my shell phone.
Oh, why did you say that till afterwards?
Oh, I wanted to ask you, speaking of like needing to be hooked immediately, I know you listened to our last episode of Heroin Addiction.
Oh.
How do you feel about me recommending a series to you that I said you probably need to read 25 chapters to get into?
I mean, we'll see. I am an enigma. You never know what's going to grab me or not, or what's going to piss me off. I'm very volatile when it comes to manga and anime. Yeah. So, like, I guess I have to try, what was it, Concubine Walkthrough now?
Yeah.
Concubine Walkthrough. Speaking of problematic history.
Yeah. Mr. Floatover.
Well, at least that one you can be like, well, it's a game.
And a thing that happened in China.
Also based on a real happening, kind of, sort of.
Except it purposefully was not based on anything real.
Exactly.
I purposely did
Wink.
no research
Wink.
for cultural sensitivity.